Sam, I hope you're coming. Otherwise, I'm going to have to start singing, which is not going to be good for anyone in this crowd. Hello, hello. So absolutely delighted to be here with all of you. So we're going to take a look under the hood of long-term growth, what that means in this new era of sports. And I am delighted to be joined here by two leaders who really sit at this intersection between analytics, strategy, and value creation. You probably both know, you know their CVs very well, but I'll start with Sam here, CEO of Boston Red Sox, driving force behind Fenway Sports Group and its global expansion. So essentially, he took what was a local franchise and just turned it into this worldwide sports and media enterprise. So baseball, hockey, soccer, racing, and journalists describe him as somebody who is just, he's looking a little nervous, like what? Can go just as easily from the boardroom to the clubhouse and back to the boardroom. So I'm really delighted to have you here, Sam.
Thank you. Great to be here. Good to see everybody.
Theo Epstein there. If you read or you saw Moneyball, you're about halfway home to understanding at least how part of his brain works. So he brought, I would say, modern winning back to baseball. And senior advisor, obviously, at FSG, also an operating partner at Arctos. And one of the favorite quotes that I didn't tell you that I read from you is, change is hard, but stagnation is fatal. Do you remember saying that?
I never said that, but it sounds great. Looks good in the deck, for sure.
We're going to attribute it to you. But one more important point about Fenway Sports Group is that it's really one of these driving forces behind SSG, so the Strategic Sports Group, which is what committed the $3.5 billion to the PGA Tour. And for those of you who maybe don't know, although I imagine in this room you do, this is a really heavy-hitting consortium. Steve Cohen, Mark Attanasio, Arthur Blank, Wick Grossbeck, Mark Lazary. I mean, usually when you have names this big, you have to launch a tequila brand, right? But instead of that, you went forward on a different project. So with that in mind, Sam, I just want to hear, what was the 60-second pitch that you gave to that group?
Well, we needed to see what could be done to help golf, to help the PGA Tour. At Fenway, we've been very proud. This is actually our 25th year together. John Henry was kind enough to hire Theo and I 25 years ago, and we've tried to get involved with clubs, teams, brands, venues, leagues that matter and elevate them. And we saw what was happening in the summer of 2023. We were actually at a Major League Baseball meeting, lots of passionate golf fans at Major League Baseball, and John Henry asked the simple question, where is the sports community getting behind what's happening with the PGA Tour? Where are they to try and help? So that was how this all started about 2 years ago.
Okay, so I named a bunch of big fancy people. Who was the hardest to convince? Go ahead and name names.
Honestly, the lead investors are obviously Fenway Sports Group, which is John Henry and his partner Tom Werner, Mike Gordon, Arthur Blank, Steve Cohen are the other leads. It was not hard. People immediately got the vision. We are not private equity, by the way. That's a big misconception. We are sports team owners and operators who care deeply about the sport aspect of it, and it was not hard. We actually were oversubscribed, and our biggest regret is that we probably didn't invest more. The players were wise. They knew that they only needed a certain amount of capital. So it's been terrific, and we're off to a great start.
So when you say oversubscribed, and Theo, I want to bring you in, I mean, $3.5 billion commitment in 6 months, is that the fastest deal that you've ever worked on?
Yeah, for me, for sure. I mean, it came together quickly. Again, it was really mission driven. It was that golf was at a critical moment, and you have this, iconic brand and IP in the PGA Tour, and sort of sits at the absolute linchpin of the entire golf industry. So it was a rare opportunity to influence an entire sport and industry, not just one entity with a franchise or league.
So do you guys think you were the only one with this vision, or were you just more effective at getting the voices that needed to be around the table?
Well, we thought we were the only people with the idea, and we thought we were the only ones involved. We approached the board in 2003 in the wake of the June framework agreement announcement. We went to the board, and we quickly realized that there were 7 or 8 other groups with the very same idea. But thankfully for us, as Theo said, the sort of mission-driven orientation hopefully separated our group and our experience in the National Football League with Arthur Blank and Major League Baseball with John Henry and Steve Cohen and Wick Grossbeck and the NBA. Experience in working with leagues, league governance, being a true equity holder. I mean, one of the things that is misunderstood about this, the players themselves, 200 players have equity in the PGA Tour enterprises.
Yeah, because that's a sea change for them. Completely
yes,
change.
yes. And to have that alignment between the players and the investors is what drove everything. And as we look to make decisions now, as we look to change the nature of the PGA Tour, the players not only have a seat at the table, they're driving the process. Tiger Woods, Adam Scott, Peter Malnati, Camilo Villegas are sitting alongside of Theo Epstein and John Henry and Joe Gorder and the business and sports expertise to take us forward. That was only achievable through the deal structure that John Henry created, literally designed and architected to be rooted in full alignment. And that's really what drove everything, and that's what drove the investment and the interest in the investment. And so we're really excited about where we're headed.
So Theo, if we bridge your experience between baseball and golf. So in baseball, basically you put a shot clock on the sport, right? You sped it up, you tightened it, let's say, viewership, streaming, media, you've had a really successful track record. So what can you do to make golf a more engaging, exciting product, if we think of it in media terms, product to consume?
Yeah, and golf and baseball have a lot in common. If you think about it, they're probably the 2 sports that have tradition at its core and center more than any of the others. And that's a wonderful thing. I see that as a huge asset, but can also be a bit of an obstacle when it comes time for change. And in baseball, one of the ways that we were able to accomplish that kind of transformative change with the pitch timer was that you were really with the pitch timer, you were restoring baseball back to its organic rhythm that it's had. Throughout most of baseball history, a pitch would be thrown every 10 or 15 seconds, and the modern game had evolved in part because of the infusion of data and analytics, and in part just because everything was being optimized at every possible turn. Now, all of a sudden, pitchers were throwing pitches every 20, 30 seconds. So it was the fact that you could be traditional and restore the pace that's inherent in baseball. And I think baseball at its best. The question we asked at the outset of that project that resulted in the pitch timer was, what is the very best version of baseball? And those are the same questions that we're asking now in the golf world. What is the very best version of golf? And golf has changed very, very little over centuries, but the sports entertainment landscape, the consumer has changed very much. Modern sensibilities are not such that everyone's going to sit down on a Thursday morning and watch 72 holes of golf straight through to Sunday afternoon. The sports that have adapted and modernized and been able to generate short-form content and be more highlights-driven and be faster-moving, a little bit more action-packed, have done extremely well. Golf doesn't need at all to get away from its essence and its tradition and the things that make it great in order to modernize and be even more appealing to the modern sports fan. But there's some changes we can contemplate to the competitive model that can make it even more dynamic than it is. And Brian Rolap's been on record, so I can talk about it, about focusing on parity, scarcity, and simplicity. With parity, I think golf almost has more parity than any other sport. Like less than half a shot per round on average separates the best golfer in the world from the 50th best golfer in the world. So anyone can win in any given week. So parity, I think, is innate in the sport. But when it comes to scarcity, we're very fragmented right now. There are a lot of tournaments practically every week. There's something else going on. We don't have the best players in the world playing against one another, matchups, rivalries often enough. And so there's a way, perhaps, by introducing a little bit more scarcity to create more premium value on the content. And then simplicity, the point system, for example, is probably 20 people in the world who fully understand the point system week to week and all the multipliers and everything else. And I think one of the things that other sports leagues do really well, the NFL, for example, when you talk about scarcity, 17-week season, and simplicity, you can drop a fan at any point in the course of a season, and you know what the stakes are. You know the difference between a team that's going to go 10-7 or a team that's going to go 9-8, what it means for the playoffs, and ultimately your chance to win the Super Bowl. In golf, it's a little bit less clear, week to week, moment to moment, shot to shot, what's at stake. So I think there's a real opportunity to just enhance the competitive model around more parity, more scarcity, more simplicity, so that there's more consequence more often throughout the course of a tournament and season, and ultimately postseason, and engage our fans in a way that's a little bit reflects the modern sensibilities of new consumers.
Yeah, Sam, how do you pick
By the way,
up
if you would have told me 25 years ago the two of us would be sitting up here talking about golf and not baseball, I would have said you're crazy.
Sam's golf game's not his forte, but he's good. He's good at other things.
No, it's the extraordinary nature of what we get to do at Fenway Sports Group, right? Where it's baseball, English football, National Hockey League, PGA Tour. We're just so lucky to be a small part of all of it.
So from a really big picture question, and Theo, you just reminded me of this when you talked about fragmentation, there were some at the time who said that what you put together looked like a reaction to Live Golf, that it was essentially defensive. So first question, how much did that annoy you on a scale of 1 to 10? And then we'll move on.
No, I think Scott O'Neill, who's a 30-year friend, said it well. These sports are evolving, they're changing, moving forward. It was an opportunity that we thought, you shouldn't make an investment into something unless you think you add a real competitive edge, right? If you can add capital, but also add operating experience. And we thought we could do that given our experience in these major sports in the United States, in the United Kingdom. And so it was not a defensive move at all. In fact, it was a very much an offensive move to get involved and help. Remember, the PGA Tour was a 501c6 membership organization, which still exists today. The creation of PGA Tour enterprises had never been done before. There had never been a sport majority equity owned by its participants. And that's what we created, 200 equity holders who are the greatest athletes in the world on the PGA Tour in partnership with NFL owners, NBA owners, Major League Baseball, English Premier League owners. And that really resonated. So I think it was very much an offensive move. I also think it's a big world out there. And while we've had conversations with the PIF and Live Golf in the past, we're going to keep those lines of communication open. But you heard Scott's vision. Theo just articulated a lot of Brian Rolap's vision. It's going to be extraordinary to see where both of these tours head in the future.
I think the deal was a lot more about opportunity than it was about threat. Because if you look at what was going on in the golf ecosystem at the time, golf itself was booming in a lot of different verticals and by a lot of different metrics. Player participation was way up. Youth participation was way up. You talked earlier on the panel with Scott about YouTube golf and golf influencers. Golf was moving towards the center of the sort of entertainment zeitgeist in this country. And those are all great indicators for golf, but they, at the time, weren't really being reflected in increased engagement with the PGA Tour itself. Ratings and attendance at the time had not had the same spike as some of those other indicators. Now, that's changing. It's a great year for ratings and great year for attendance, and demographics are improving. So tons of momentum. I think the PGA Tour is really strong, but with the introduction of a new competitive model, can even get to another level. So that's really, that type of opportunity is what the investment was about.
Little curiosity question about media consumption, because when you speak to Gen Z, it's like everything, it's TikTok, everything has, and that is not how, at least personally, I think of golf. So when you're thinking about this new competitive landscape and how it's going to be consumed, do you care how much Gen Z is paying attention?
Yeah, I'll let Theo opine on that, but I would just say at the outset, recruiting Brian Rolap to the PGA Tour was very intentional. Someone who has been at the forefront of media, working with media partners, and identifying what our consumers really want and need was an affirmative strategy. And so that media background was critical. Arthur Blank led the search committee. The NFL has set the gold standard in terms of connecting with the consumer, long-form games, short-form content. So it's going to be exciting to see what Brian can do. But over to you, Theo.
Yeah, I think golf actually creates a ton of really compelling short-form content. There's probably just not enough of it just yet. But if you think about, a great shot, a hole-in-one. If you think about, you go the other end of the spectrum, you see one of the best players in the world go out and shank one, off, 200 yards to the right, which we all do week to week.
Especially you.
Especially you, sir. Those go viral immediately. But then when the competition itself, there are moments of great drama. There are times when there are real rivalries head-to-head that you see on the course. They just don't happen quite as often as you have in the other sports, where the competitive model of the other sports is engineered around that type of head-to-head competition and creating those moments of real consequence. Golf is more at the time, and this is a real asset, it's designed in a very meritocratic way. You have to play 72 holes in order to determine who the best player that week is. You have to grind your way through a very long season with a lot of tournaments to determine who the best player in the world is, and it might just be, again, a fraction of a shot difference on a per-round basis. But there are ways, I think, to, without losing the best part of the integrity of the competition, to enhance that competitive model, so there are more moments that capture the attention of not just core golf fans, but casuals and even non-sports fans. If you look at, a playoff, for instance, in golf, when the tournament ends in a tie, if you get a playoff between two of the best players in the world, it's must-see TV. Everyone tunes in late Sunday afternoon. That only happens on average. It's once a year on average that there's a playoff between two top 50 players. And that's something that everyone would tune in to see and is great to the sport. So maybe there's a way through tweaking the competitive model, not doing anything that's inorganic or manufactured or convoluted, but to make sure the best players are playing against one another more often in a way that pits them head-to-head in a very dramatic, compelling way. That is great, also short-form content.
What's been your number one surprise, just since you've put this together and from what you've seen?
Without a doubt, it has been the input and direction and guidance from the players themselves. The dedication to the tour, the trajectory of the tour, the partnerships with the sponsors. It's incredible to see how much time and energy the player directors and the player advisory council members have given to this. They love the PGA Tour. Obviously, Jack and Arnie started this thing back in 1959, 1960, and Tiger Woods has taken it on as a personal mission to be sure that the tour thrives into the future. And the amount, I had no idea how much time as board members while they're playing, it's amazing. I mean, Patrick Cantlay playing at the highest level in the world, sitting through, 4 or 5 hour board meetings, Tiger Woods doing the same, Adam Scott doing the same, Peter Malnati, Camilo. I mean, these guys are incredible. So the players have been, and their involvement has been the biggest surprise for me.
Yeah, I'll just add to Sam's answer, because for me it's the players too, and their involvement and how insightful they've been, but also how much they care about the sport as a whole and the long view they're able to take. When you deal with players in a lot of other sports and you're contemplating change, almost out of necessity, players have to take a shorter term view. If you're talking about change in the NFL, and I've never worked for the NFL, but I've talked to people who have, the average length of a playing career is 2 years, 2.5 years in the NFL. If you're talking about fundamental change to the playing rules, the way the game's played, that's maybe not a variable you want to deal with as you're trying to extend your career to get to 3 years and an above average length career. And by definition, when you're talking to players, you're talking about the very best in the world at the current way of playing the game, at the current competitive model, at the current setup. So it's almost antithetical to their best interest to contemplate change if you're looking just at the here and now and in the short term. Our players, in part because I think because golf has longer playing careers, but I think mainly because of this amazing breakthrough of making players equity holders in the vehicle and the investment, that there's complete alignment. Players want not just what might be best for them, next Thursday as they start a tournament, but what's best for the sport over many, many years and many, many decades. And also, these guys are going to be involved in golf and playing golf their whole lives. And golf is a sport that you pass down to your kids. And so there's this real sense of doing what's best for golf and the PGA Tour over the long haul. And in the end, that'll create a rising tide that lifts everyone up.
So we have a couple of minutes left. I would love to do a final round, buy, sell, hold. It's like once a banker, always a Theo looks really skeptical. Yeah, I know. All right, I'll start with Sam.
Buy.
Okay. Streaming as the dominant consumption model for live sports. Buy, sell, hold. Okay. Theo.
Yeah, buy, but it hasn't happened just yet. Everyone says, traditional is dead, but its legacy's holding on a little bit. So another couple of years.
Okay. Saudi Arabia as a lasting force in global sports ownership.
Buy, for sure. And John Henry and Linda Henry and a few others from SSG and I have had the chance to visit the kingdom. We've gotten to know people involved with the PIF, and the commitment to sport, global sport, is clear, and it's been fascinating to watch the various investments over the last couple of years. So definitely buy.
Sure, second it.
Okay, +1. All right, we'll take it. All right, Theo, you have to answer this first. AI and data analytics driving on course, so for golf, in decision making.
On course. Well, yeah, I mean, it's happening already as far as data analytics. Not every player wants it, but a lot of players, and I guess look at the Ryder Cup, the Europeans that are brilliant, data-driven, I guess you would say, strategy. They ran a ton of simulations that help them prepare and get ready to execute. But yeah, I mean, look, that's the future of all sport is not data and ultimately AI not being, exclusively what drives decision making, but a very important tool, and you just get lapped and left behind if you ignore it. So I think the key is when you look at it as from 10,000 feet, and you're looking at the sport as entertainment. Sometimes data and certainly AI is best used sort of behind the scenes as a tool to help prepare, and you don't necessarily want it to infiltrate down onto the playing field or even into the clubhouse. When fans watch live sports, I think they do it sometimes to get away from the rest of their data-driven world and artificial intelligent world. And I think sports has to remain that kind of a respite. But that said, the data helps athletes and helps industry optimize, and that's going to happen. But being thoughtful about where those boundaries are is important.
Team Human. Sam? Buy, sell, hold, I'm assuming.
Well, for sure, it's a buy, but I couldn't agree more with the last comment, and ensuring in our industry that people and relationships will always rise above and endure. And if you are getting into the sports business right now, you have a major competitive and strategic advantage if you can make a cold call, if you can look someone in the eye, shake their hand, ask them a question, build a relationship, build a bridge. Every single deal we've done over the past 25 years has been rooted in relationships and in human beings. So I think that's really important to remember.
I like Team Human. It's a good one to be on. All right, esports making a comeback as a serious investment category.
I don't see it. Put it in the same category as pickleball.
Okay. Some seriously offended
we joke
people.
around about all the pickleball decks floating around.
Yeah.
given
team pickleball out here all of a sudden.
Given I'll take the other side of that coin. Just given our boss and principal John Henry owns a company called iRacing out of New England that is doing. Would you call that?
That doesn't count as
pickleball,
esports.
Theo?
No.
Okay, all right.
I'm an iRacing.
Right.
My son's very good at iRacing, and I'm a big fan of that.
Sorry about the pickleball offensive line, but the idea is, people want to see people doing other things that they can't do, right? That's why we watch the amazing athletes that we watch. Like, my neighbors play pickleball. I could play pickleball.
Yeah, that's it.
Like,
Pickleball
nobody
is
wants
awesome.
to watch me play pickleball.
For all the pickleball fiends out there, I think it's an amazing participatory sport. I was speaking only as a spectator.
I'm not trying
TV
to trip
sport.
you up on pickleball here, Theo. All right. So, private equity ownership in college sports, buy, sell, hold.
Yeah, I think it's inevitable. If you look at college football essentially being the number 2 sport in the country and the dollars at play, and I'm biased working with Arctos and seeing how I think ultimately helpful private equity can be in the right situation as a thought partner in other sports. It's probably inevitable that they get involved in college sports in a meaningful way.
All right, one last final word. One prediction for the PGA Tour from both of you.
That 2 gentlemen who are both Mormon will be leading their respective tours 1 year from
bad.
now.
It's bad content. All right, Theo, bail him out.
I'll say that ultimately the PGA Tour will benefit from the same meaningful increase in interest and engagement and stakes in their postseason that the other sports benefit from. We just wrapped up an incredible Major League Baseball postseason that's great for the sport, and there are a lot of fans out there who tune in most during the postseason, some who just tune in only in the postseason. You don't see that quite as much in golf, given the prevalence of the majors and just the nature of the sport, but there's a tremendous opportunity there to take the FedEx Cup playoffs and enhance them and transform them the way Brian would like to, and so I think someday you'll see the postseason be one of the pinnacles of golf, the way it is in other sports as well.
Theo, Sam, thank you very much for the great conversation.
Thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Sit, stand. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. It was fun. Here, Theo.